Well, we'll get underway then. Retention Centre and notifying students, and they go together. We're not looking at Retention Centre per se, but we are looking at Retention Centre for a specific reason, and that is to notify our students. And we're just going to walk you through some of the things that academic staff are doing. But to put some context around it, you just say, okay, first of all, we're not assuming anything. So where do I find Retention Centre? And if you have twin monitors, then and you have a subject that you can get into, then we would recommend that you follow through with us, particularly because we're not always able to show live sites, simply because then that's in breach of student confidentiality. So if you have a twin screen and you're able to go into your subject site, then you'll see where to find it on the lower portion of the navigation menu under the Evaluation tab and into Retention Centre. Now, the good thing about Retention Centre is that you can begin to use it immediately. You don't have to set it up, and basically it's there, ready to go. Now, the other good thing about Retention Centre, particularly if you have 2 or 3 or more subjects, is that you can go from your main dashboard, and on the top right-hand side, what they call the global navigation menu, and you can see there how I've got a screen capture on the right-hand side of the screen. Right next to the logout button, you have a drop-down menu called the Global Navigation menu, and you may want to explore the access to Retention Centre through that avenue. Now, the good thing is that you can get a snapshot of all your subject sites and the way that you're using Retention Centre. So if you squint quite a bit, you probably can see the up and down arrow, and it has a red 2 or a red next to it, with a 2 in it, which shows that I have 2 alerts from either 2 different subjects or 2 alerts from 1 subject. And if I click on that arrow, then I would go into a summary of all the retention centers across my subjects. And so through that global navigation menu, you can become quite efficient in using Retention Center. Now, Retention Center is set up by Blackboard Learn, which is that's Interact 2 instance, and it comes with 4 configured rules. And those default alerts, if you like, you can change them. Now, we're not going through how to change any of these things. We're just putting a bit of context. We have run Retention Center in-depth professional development, and we're certainly willing to do that on a particularly on a school basis, because there may be some commonalities between schools and you may want to be using Retention Center in a particular way. And so we can configure or customize these rules so that they trigger alerts in a way that is more helpful to you. And Kelly's going to go through that in a practical way. So I'm just setting the background now. Now, those rules, there are in 4 areas: access and activity, grade, and missed deadlines. And you can see a faint image of what the grade center looks like in the background. So a bit more about those rules. There is that access rule, and you can set up a rule. It's prefigured already. I think it's defaulted at 5 days. But you might think that my students really need to be in there in every second day or something, or even every day. So you might want to change that alert rule, and you can do that by customizing it. Activity rule, basically that's, you know, they're in your site, they're clicking on things, and then you may want to set that as a rule, because it mightn't be every second day that's important for you that they're in, but because they are in your subject site and you set it up as a particular learning design, and they're expected to go to an announcement or an email, from an email to an announcement, or to subject content, then they have to go somewhere else. For instance, a self-test on something, then they have to post to a forum. They might even have to go to a blog that they have to maintain themselves. So you can see that when they're in a subject site, they might have to be engaging in a lot of activity. So the activity rule may be more of a gauge of student engagement than simply the access rule. Then there's the grade rule, and you can define that, and we touched on this yesterday. It's important that if you're going to use the grade rule, that you begin to use Grade Center straight away. Don't leave the entering of grades. Doesn't mean you have to release the grades, by the way, but you can enter the grades. And as soon as you do that, then you have a cumulative mark column. It's by default set as what's called the external grade, and the retention center operates off this column. And as soon as you have grades in there, then you can set a trigger to say, okay, I want to know the students who are above average, well above average. I want to know the students who are well below average. And so you can begin to use Grade Center and Retention Center in a way that's going to give you some alerts to students. Then you can also have a missed deadline. This rule takes a bit to think about and to get it to work for us. It doesn't operate off East's assignments, by the way. There may be a workaround if we wanted to do that. It's not ideal, but there are. But if you felt that you really wanted a missed deadline connected to Easts, then there possibly is a workaround that we could explore. But otherwise, it flows through. If you've got a set date for maybe week 1 self-test, I know that there are some lecturers who are using a self-test and they put it in week 1, maybe even the Wednesday of week 1, because they want to know not only the students who have accessed their subject outline, but they want to know students who have digested the subject outline. And so they have a bit of a self-test, and basically it's a no-brainer in one sense. But you can set up a missed deadline and find out those students who have not only not accessed the subject outline, but have not read and digested it. And so using this missed bit of a tongue twister, a missed deadline, then you can begin to find out those students who have not engaged and send them a notification. And so that's the next screen you're looking at. Not only are you able to monitor student engagement and progress, but out of the retention center, you can communicate with these students, and you'll see a background snapshot there of 28 students who are meeting this rule. In this case, it's a grade rule, but and not a missed deadline. But the point is that you can communicate with those students, and you can set up a deadline or a rule for that matter, and it doesn't have to be on those students who are not necessarily engaged, but you can set it up in a way that you can send out confirming notifications and say students who have done something week 1, day 1. And it's very, very easy then to send out a confirming notification and give students some positive reinforcement because they have engaged early. And there are anecdotally and also by research to show that students who are engaged early are the ones who are also the ones who are succeeding. So there's lots to explore in there. Now the centerpiece of the retention center is this activity table. We're not going through it, but just so you can identify it. And you may not like the idea of it being a retention center, so when you see retention, just change it in your mind to student activity center if you like. We may not be into retention in the way that Blackboard Learn in America has devised everything, but it is a student activity center, and as we said, we can look at all ranges of student activity, and then follow through with notifications. So in this particular case, we just want to look through at a subject access rule and see what happens. So, no, there it is. So if I go to that table, then I get this horizontal thermometer, and it's telling me from the alert that I've got 24 students who have an access alert. So I click on the 24 students, the red one, and I get this other thermometer that comes out, and that tells me that 22 students did not contribute, and 9 of them actually didn't even log in. And so I want to send out a notification to the 22 students. So I simply click on those 22 students, and I get this further little sub-menu, and I can send out an access alert. And I click on the students because they're the ones who I want to notify. Observers, I suppose I think in the Blackboard sense, they are actually parents, which isn't important for us. I don't think we can customize that so that it would actually be tutors or anyone else, but maybe that's something we could explore. But the point is, we click on the students to notify, and that opens up an email where I can then begin to customize it. And you can see there that there is a subject. Now, at the top that's blurred out are the individual students who that email will be going to. Now, it is a blind CC, so students do not know who they are, but I know who they are. So that's just that's important for you to realize, that it's confidential, so that Mary doesn't know that John's got an email and vice versa, but you do know who's got them. And it's important for your own record that you tick that green circle down there, because you get a email as well in your inbox. And what you need to do is include a list of recipients so that you have a historic record of who you've emailed. Now, that's the background of it all. So hopefully that will allow you to make sense as Kelly goes through what and demonstrates what and how she has been using Retention Center in I'm not sure if it's 2017 or 2018 or a bit of both. So Kelly, I'm going to stop sharing, and that'll allow you now to take control. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stuart. I'm just sharing my screen. Hopefully, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yep, great, excellent. All right, excellent. Thanks, Stuart. So my name's Kelly Linden. So I have been a lecturer in the School of Community Health, but I'm currently on secondment in the Faculty of Science, working as the Faculty Quality Manager. So I'm working with subjects on how we can improve progress rates. And we've used the subject access rule that Stuart's just shown us to improve subject rates in a number of subjects across the faculty. Last year was the first year that we trialled it, and it's the only year that we have full data for, because grades haven't been released yet. So we can't sort of examine 2018-30 progress rates yet. We will in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll have some even nicer data than what we were able to gather last year. So last year was a little bit of we tried a few different things for different subjects and did a fair bit of analysis at the end, and what I'm going to present sort of what seems to work best across a wide range of subjects in the Faculty of Science. Now, I'll just, sorry, to the next screen, if that's going to work. Excellent. So why are we using Retention Centre? So in my role, I'm responsible for addressing some of the points of our faculty I&I, or initiatives in the improvements plan. And a couple of key points regarding our subjects are the subject progress rates and subject evaluation survey scores. not going to talk about the SES scores here today though, so we'll just talk about the subject progress rates. Now, within our faculty I&I plan, we've got a metric that we try to meet with all of our subjects for progress, and that's 80%. So within each subject, we hope that 80% of students will receive a passing grade, 80% or greater, sorry, and non-passing grades fails, obviously, but then also fail withdrawn, so students who haven't submitted a single assessment item through the semester, and also approved withdrawals are counted, and they're kind of out of the academics' control. Now, what we found doing a little bit of analysis last year was that most subjects in the Faculty of Science that have progress rates below 80%, it's not due to a high number of students attempting the assessment items and failing. It's mostly due to a high number of FWs, so fail withdrawn, no attempted assessment item, or approved withdrawal. And students that do fail, the majority of students that fail subjects are not submitting all the assessment items. So there's very few subjects in the faculty that students truly, they attempt every assessment item, they go to all the classes, and they still fail en masse. And probably wouldn't be surprised that one of the subjects that does fit into that category, despite excellent teachers, is a calculus-based physics subject that students in first year are just not quite prepared for. So it's a big thing that we keep saying to staff is we don't want to make subjects easier to pass, we just want to address the issues with why some subjects have a high fail rate. So in 2017, we trialled 2 initiatives. In week 2, we used the subject access rule that Stuart just showed you in Retention Centre to email students who have not accessed Interact. And prior to HECS census date on the Friday of week 4, but so usually either late in week 3 or early in week 4, we used a metric to contact students. It was either something that indicated they were disengaged from their subjects. So it was either non-submission of an early assessment item, if there was something appropriate within that subject, non-attendance at compulsory classes. Some subjects didn't have an early assessment item, but they had a weekly compulsory prac class, and so we just got the prac list. Or if they hadn't accessed I2, so using the subject access rule so either if students hadn't engaged in their subject, we worked with the Office for Students to individually phone students to see if they needed assistance or if they were planning on withdrawing and, or if they were planning to not continue with the subject. And the Office for Students are quite good at discussing the fees associated with not unenrolling prior to HECS census. So we contacted disengaged students. Last year, we contacted students post-HECS census, and we found that we had absolutely no effect on student success in the subject. I think we were a little bit hopeful, but okay, they haven't engaged, it's week 6, maybe we can convince them to engage. We had 0 success. Every student that we contacted continued to fail. So I'm sure there's on an individual basis, there'd be some students that you could contact, but en masse as we're attempting, it had no effect. So any contact needed to be done pre-HECS census. So I'll just quickly show you some results. So I have a case study from a large first semester subject with a progress rate of 73%. So in this subject, there were 126 students, and in week 2, we emailed 31 of those students because they hadn't met the access rule with I2, which was accessing Interact within those first 2 weeks of session. I think we set it up for. Of the 31 students we emailed, 13 withdrew immediately. 1 continued to be disengaged and received an FW. And 15 submitted their first assessment item. So I think I'll just have a look at this question in one moment, but something that we really worked out here was it's quite common for students to not be engaged in their subject in week 2 in a first semester subject because they're still sorting out their enrolment. So that's quite common. So we really promoted sending a friendly email in week 2. So, hi, it looks like you haven't been accessing Interact. If there's anything we can do to help, and sending a few links out. And we've shared that template with staff within the Faculty of Science, but if there's any staff outside of the Faculty of Science in this meeting who like to see our template, that seems to work quite well, as in you get quite a few students replying to that email, oh, sorry, I've just been added to the subject, I'll go in and have a look now, or that, like, you want to keep the tone friendly because there's often reasons they haven't accessed Interact. Sorry, I'll just have a look at the chat question here. Oh, great, thanks Cass for suggesting that the, yeah, everyone can see on the screen there. Thanks, Cass. Now, in this subject, we also contacted students in week 4. By week 4, you're getting to the point where it's a bit too late to succeed in a subject. You've quite likely missed an early assessment item. So the emails that we send in week 4 to students, or phone calls, are a little bit sterner. There's links to unenroll, there's links to the course director, there's links to email the subject coordinator if there's an extenuating circumstance, and you can try to continue in the subject, but to contact the subject coordinator. And that stern email seemed to have quite an impact in that 13 of those 16 students who hadn't been engaging in week 4 unenrolled from the subject. All right, so I have another chat question here. Oh, great, excellent. So if you would, I'll post my email at the end if you would like to have a look at the templates. I'll be able to email those out. Okay, now I'll just move on. So we just have a second case study that I want to present here, and with this subject, it's a large online subject with 227 students, and I was absolutely amazed when we found out 58 students did not submit the first online mini test. So 6% of the class were at risk of failing because it was a compulsory assessment item. Of those 58 students, we randomly allocated them into 2 groups. The Office for Students called half of the students and spoke with them. And the Office for Students staff are really well trained to speak to to speak to students and see if there is anything they can do to help, or to provide really clear instructions on how to unenroll from the subject. The subject coordinator called the other half of the students who didn't attempt the first assessment item. And in both instances, the Office for Students and the subject coordinator tried to call the students 3 times, and after that an email was sent. From the Office for Students, they sent a very generic email, please contact your subject coordinator. The email that was sent sort of from the subject coordinator, which was actually sent from me, was very stern with links to unenrollment, links of how to unenroll or to contact the subject coordinator with extenuating circumstances. So I'm running out of time here, and sorry, I can see there's a chat question, but I'll just quickly present the results. So we found that the subject coordinator had a better, was more successful in contacting the students. 60% of the time they were able to get hold of them on the phone, because they called them at over a greater range. It was over 3 days, but it was before work, during work, and after work. And so they were more likely to get hold of them, I think, than the Office for Students. But once they had them on the phone, the Office for 77% of the students, after speaking with the Office for Students, withdrew, but only 22% after speaking with the subject coordinator. And we think the subject coordinator was far too nice. Oh, hi, no, you'll be right, that's okay. She's a really, really kind person and didn't provide clear instructions on how to unenroll or the consequences of their fees. Whereas the stern email that I sent was 41% of students to unenroll versus the generic email the Office for Students sent. So we think that the Office for Students calling students in week 4 is very, very effective. Now, I think I will have to end it, or I've got a summary up here, but I'll just have a look at the chat, sorry. Excellent, thanks Cass. Yes, we're hoping to have better data from this semester for 2018, because 2017 was really kind of working out what's best. So I haven't presented all the other subjects where things didn't work quite so well. But for this subject, we got the progress rate above 80%. And interestingly, here quickly, sorry, of the 36 students who chose to remain in the subject, 35 did not submit any assessment items and failed the subject. So by week 4, I think that we've really, there's a few instances where perhaps they really have earned a genuine special consideration and they need some assistance, but often it's just time to unenroll. All right, I think that's the end of my presentation. So,
yeah, great, Kelly. That's really interesting, and it's really nice to have some hard data that's sort of capturing the impact of the Office for Students and also the subject coordinator. Now, does anyone have any specific questions? I think we could probably we've got a couple more minutes.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was trying to rush through and have a few more minutes for questions. So.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, so Kelly, you're now actually using this case study approach to try to collect data about and how you're using Retention Centre. Do you know of any other people doing a similar thing to what you're doing within your faculty at the moment?
So on a subject level, so individual subject coordinators have been sort of using our advice, and then I'm sure adding to it, but using the template that we send out in week 2 and week 4. But I think I don't know of anyone else sort of analysing I'm sharing their analysis of their results, because we're the Faculty of Science, a lot of us love data and love playing with numbers, but we haven't been sharing it so much. So I haven't heard back. I know a lot of staff are doing it, but I haven't seen the direct results yet. But there is a new tool in SPI that's going to make my job very, very easy. So as soon as grades are released in the next week or so, I will be able to do some very quick analysis now. So I'm a bit excited about that.
Okay, that sounds really interesting as a follow-up for sure. Does anyone have any specific questions? I know we've got a few academics who have logged in here, so who would like to ask a question of Kelly? I would just like to give my email address, because there was somebody, who was after, so I should be able to type it in here, can I? Yes,
actually, that's going to be a bit messy, but it's just klinden@csu.edu.au. So I'll get my name back here. So klinden@csu.edu.au if anyone wants a copy of the templates that we send out in week 2 and week 4.
Yeah. Great. And so just one other question, in your new role, in your quality role that you've got, this is part of your core business now, is it?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So this is, the main part of my job, I guess. And then other aspects are addressing, say, I work with, as Donna's in the meeting, I work with a group of educational designers we're helping academics with any other sort of design aspects of their subjects that they would like. But
Great. Okay, look, thanks, Kelly, because that's just shown how powerful a tool Retention Centre can be for certainly in the first 4 weeks of session in supporting students and making decisions about who to be contacting and so on. So that's great. Okay.